welcome to How to Start a Board Game Company. From Off the Page Games, I'm Jay Cormier. Now this week I had the opportunity to actually speak directly with one of the manufacturers that is quoting me on the game for Mind Management, and I got email back with some follow-up questions from another manufacturer. So this week I'd like to kind of go into details about what it's like conversing with them and their expectations, and go through the files and see how that looks. So let's take a look. So this is what I sent to both of the manufacturers to quote on. I kind of had a retail price here, a retail edition here, and a deluxe edition here, and then all the items with dimension and the material of it, and any kind of notes I wanted, and the quantity of each for every single thing. And that's kind of what I thought they'd want. But apparently this wasn't good. This is a better format. This is what Longpack sent back to me. So they give every single thing kind of a unique number here, so just to kind of quantify them. The game board quantity, they've now called out that it's a 22. I had that 22 by 24 inches, but they tell me that the fold will end up being an 11 by 8 inches. So that's kind of neat. I didn't actually calculate that out. I mean, it's pretty obvious when you fold it up. That's exactly what it's going to be. Half on one side and then a third on the other side to get into the sixth fold. They're telling me 128 GSM C2S mounted on 1.5 millimeter board. Gray board, black paper on the back, it says. Oh, I see it. I can stretch it out a bit. I don't fully know what that means. That's kind of a quality of the type of paper that's going to be mounted on a board. So that's really cheap paper, but because I guess it's mounted, maybe C2S is some form of gluing or something as a type of mounting. And 1.5 millimeter, my understanding, that's on the thin side for boards, but that's maybe fine, and maybe it'll be a stretch goal to upgrade it. And this just says for color, and it's going to be a glossy finish. Okay, cool. And then you can see here they already are ready for all the different quantities. So that's kind of cool. That's really cool. We don't have those numbers yet because they had some questions. They wanted me to verify a few things. For cards, here's a quantity, here's a size. Fine. They're going with a 300 GSM white core. Again, that C2. I got to find out what that C2S means. And they're saying shrink wrap 2 decks. This is where I had to go back to them and say, no, actually it's not. They didn't fully understand the shift system that we're going with, where there's going to be a bunch of things in envelopes that has to be manually packed like a legacy game. So I had to kind of walk through that with them in email form. I've only talked to Longpack on email. Punchboard tokens, these are the mental note tokens. I gave them the size, dimension, and they're saying this, but make sure it's erasable lamination. Cool, yeah, that's exactly what I want. Then the screen, those are my dimensions, and then where it folds. That's not. Oh, I didn't catch this. They're saying it folds in half in the middle, but that's not true. It's going to fold to like a screen on either side. So we'll see what comes back from the quote on that. Same kind of board here, 1 millimeter. So this is a very thin board, and that's true. For the retail, I'm just going with a thin board, and then for the deluxe, I'm going to go with a nice kind of cardboard that it's going to have some extra features. They made it erasable lamination, so that was a mistake. I told them, no, that does not have the screen. There is no dry erase on that. And then 3 pockets. So the retail version will not have pockets, but the deluxe version, because it's going to be thicker, it's going to have kind of like Mysterium, like pockets that you can insert cards into so they don't take up table space. I think that's going to be really cool. And but that's not on the retail version. So in the file missing, I had a picture of it, and I had sent that to her of what I was meaning, so she understood that. Anytime you can send a picture, I think, of what you're looking for, probably a good idea. And then the secret board. This 9 by 9 inches, boom, boom, boom. This one is the one that has to be dry erase, so erasable lamination. So I told her that. Punchboard tokens, this was a tricky one for both of the manufacturers. I thought this is the way they want it done, and eventually for Gameland, this was fine. But how many tokens? The idea that I thought I'd do is I took in my art program, put all my tokens with enough bleed room, and figured out with a 2 9 by 12 inch punch boards, I can get all my tokens on that. But I had to make sure I told them that was 2 different die cuts. So it would be great if I could find a way to lay it out so it would be 1 die cut, but there's too many unique and weird things that I won't be able to do that. So that is that. So 2 different die cuts. Plastic standees for the retail, because I'm going to be using just cardboard standee kind of people token for the agents that are being walking around. So we need some plastic standees. That's cool. And then the wood tokens are 0 quantity in the retail, so that is correct. And that's going to be in the deluxe, obviously. And then punch board tokens in envelope. Oh, I see what they did here. This is okay. So now in the envelopes, there's another 9 by 12 inch punch board token sheet punch board that they're going to have to manually punch out and then manually insert into various envelopes. 10. There's 10 envelopes in the game, which are we're actually going to use plastic opaque baggies because you can't see through them, but then it helps for storage afterwards so that everything has a baggie instead of just an envelope where things will float around too much. So that's cool. There's going to be 8-page comic books is the idea. We'll see what it ends up being. But in the size of a playing card, we're going to have little comic books inside each of these envelopes up towards a maximum 8 pages that will tell the story of why the contents in this envelope are in this envelope. And so that's going to be really cool. So that'll just be, it's not going to be that super, like, you know, it might be only 1 or 2 or 3 panels at the most on per card. So it's not going to be like really, really tiny panels. So I'm excited about that. That's going to be really cool and different. The game box, that's the size of the game box. They're going with a 1.5 millimeter gray board. I have to start figuring out what gray board and black core and all this stuff means and which one's better. Matte lamination, linen, and then shrink wrap. Yeah, that's kind of neat that they have all this on here. The recruits are just meeples. They didn't know what meeple size means because there are different sizes of meeples, so I had to clarify that. And pen, a marker. Yeah, cool. That's great. And then there's going to be a comic book that's actually comic book size in the game. And the idea is that that's going to tell the rules on how to play the training mission via a comic book. So that is pretty exciting that Matt Kent's kind of interested and agreed to do that. But then there will also be a rule book, if you know, that you can actually read the rule book if you don't want to read the comic book. But why wouldn't you want to read a comic book? So that's all that. And then then they had stretch goals, and then a lot of this. So one was make it go to a 2 millimeter board, so that makes sense. That's a good stretch goal. I think that's what I put on there. Cards to go to 310. What was it before? 300 or something. It was 300 GSM white core, and then they said let's go to 310 Chinese black core. I'm not sure what the difference. Chinese black core. Is there a difference between Chinese black core and just black core? I don't know. Cool. And then plastic tokens. I canceled this for I had an idea of maybe doing this, but I'm not going to do it. And UV spot for how much it costs for a UV spot as a stretch goal, because we have actually a really cool idea for UV spot. It's just not for show. There's some cool stuff. And then the deluxe version, or the Dulex version, definitely a lot of ESL challenges, which is fine. It's just something you have to work through. And it's challenging sometimes, but so far it hasn't caused any issues. Everyone's wants the same thing so far that I've been, if at least from these two companies, they're all like, yeah, let's figure it out. Let's, you know, send me a picture of what you think, what you're talking about, just so I understand. I'm like, oh, I get it. Okay, now. So maybe it takes a little longer to kind of have a communication, but everyone's been super nice so far. So everything here is the same here, I think, except for stuff like, for some reason they had 0. That was my fault. I put 0 quantities for the secret board. I'm like, yeah, it's got a secret board. Same issues here. This one now has plastic trays with 10 lids. That's going to be a game trays type of feature. Maybe it'll be 10 things. Maybe it'll be all built in. We'll see. Last week we filled out the form. We're still kind of waiting to hear back from that for game trays. And then this one has wood tokens, so character wooden tokens for the deluxe version. And then even wooden... where is the wooden mayhem tokens? Hopefully it's in here. I thought it was in here somewhere. Character. Oh, mayhem. That's literally right on it. There's character tokens here, and then there's mayhem tokens. That's things that go between spaces on the board to block movement. And that would just be, in the deluxe, it's going to be a wooden token instead of just a cardboard token. And I think that's all the same down here. And then with the deluxe, all sorts of different things here with, you know, upgrades like before. I'm not going to do plastic miniatures. I wanted to get a quote though on plastic miniatures, like actual like minis. I don't think this is the right game to have minis in. I don't think people, I don't know. Everyone loves minis, I guess, but there would only be 4 minis, maybe 8 if you want the Immortals also to be minis. So I separated them into 2 different stretch goals, but I might not even include it. It depends on the cost and if it's even worth it. I don't know. Because I like the idea of the wooden token, nice chunky wooden token, like a nice big thick wooden token. To me, seems interesting. But we're gonna have for stretch goals heat printing on the Mayhem, heat printing on the character tokens, and in the envelopes. Otherwise, everything else is the same. How many tokens? Yeah, she needs to know that. Perfect. Oh, there's a little thing. So that, how many tokens? Perfect. So that was working with Longpack. So I haven't heard back from them yet after I kind of reviewed and gave them all the answers. But then through this one, I actually got to talk on FaceTime, I think it was. FaceTime. With Gameland. So like this Gameland company here that gave us this thing, they're the ones that are printing my Fail Faster journal, which arrives maybe this week. It should be based on their estimates. We'll see. Anyways, they took this and then they had a lot of questions. They put an email and then she said, let's just have a call and figure it out. And so she understands all of this. 310 black core they want to go for. They don't want to go cheaper than that, they said. So I'm like, okay. They also want to go a 2mm thick board. They said for the size of this board, almost a 2x2 foot board almost. She says you don't want to go thinner than that. So that's interesting. So that's comparing that to Longpack. They gave, I mean, it's what I asked for, so it's fine. They gave me a 1.5mm, and then the stretch goal was to go up to 2mm. I'm like, okay. So that's interesting, something for me to think about as far as, do I just stick with the 2mm and don't bother with a stretch goal upgrade to go from 1.5 to 2mm? Does anybody even care about that? I guess it depends on the cost, right? I mean, if this all adds up to be super expensive, I'm like, well, I got to start shaving some pennies off. Maybe I do have to go to 1.5. But if that's going to impact the longevity of the game, I think that's somewhere where I can't cheap out on. Not that I want to cheap out anywhere. I don't want to cheap out anywhere. I want to make this the best looking game of all time. Everything else, let's see, she was cool with this. The screen, printed on both sides, I made sure. Oh yeah, she needed to understand the thing. I actually, being on FaceTime, I was able to send her links of like, here's a link of Mysterium, because she wasn't familiar with Mysterium. Here's what they're doing, and then she understood what to do there. So that's cool. And plastic. Everything here is fine. We had a lot of questions about the character tokens and the upgrades. Because my upgrades I put all over here as far as what I might. This is just information of for me to understand the difference in costs and can they be stretch goals or should I include them or are they interesting, blah blah blah, like heat press or silkscreen image on both sides instead of just a blank token. That would be more interesting. Or should they be a sculpted figure, like a mini? So this is all this kind of stuff. What was this? 142 plastic. Oh, gamer trays. Well, she says $142 for simple tray, and a simple tray is just a tray that isn't from gamer trays. It's like just a vacuum formed like shapes that cards can sit into and something like that. It's about $142 for a simple tray. I'm like, okay, interesting to know. I'm not sure what to do with that. I don't know if that means I need 10 of those because I have 10 baggies, 10 envelopes. So we'll see once we get the gamer trays information back. And the comics, she was cool with that. That was all cool. And the box was cool. And everything else was cool. Now this call, yeah, I think everything else is great. And you can't even tell here, but I had to delete and change a bunch of things as we were talking. Things are like, you can see some things missing here. It just didn't make sense. So we just kind of deleted some stuff and she kind of helped me out and walk through various options and whatnot. And that's what we did. So the call I had with Gameland, it was like an hour and a half long, and as you can imagine, time zone differences. It started at 11:30 p.m. at night, and so I got to bed like at 1 o'clock in the morning, which is no big deal, unless of course you have 2.5-year-old twins that wake up very early every morning. That said, it was a good call. It was great to talk to them because that's one of the best ways to make sure you're on the same page. But it was hilarious how many language and communication issues we were both having trying to explain. At one point I was trying to explain something. I'm like, okay, because we were both looking at the same spreadsheet, but it wasn't a Google sheet. We each had our own. So I couldn't just highlight a cell and tell her. I just like, well, it's in N2. And that threw her for a loop. She's like, what does that mean? I'm like, in your spreadsheet. She's like, what's a spreadsheet? I'm like, oh, I don't know what it's called in China. I don't even know. And they're like, is everything of columns and rows? Is there like an N at the top? And like that whole thing took me 5 or 10 minutes. And then in the end, it didn't make any sense to her and it was confusing everyone. I'm like, okay, forget all of that. And we just went a different way. I'm like, it's just funny trying to, fun and funny and frustrating at times, but it's, I mean, again, because everyone has the same interests and goals to help me out and make this the best game, and I truly feel that it's all good. It's all good. So that's where I'm at right now. I'm now waiting for these quotes to come in and see where we're at and see what prices this is going to make our game at. So hopefully we can have an affordable game but still make it cool. Those comic books are going to be costly. Like everything costs money. So it just depends. Do I want to make a $50 game or do I want to make a $60 or $70 game? You know, it starts to get like, ow, when it gets that high, especially once you have to convert that to Canadian money for us Canucks. But that's what I've been focused on. Sen right now is doing a demo of my management at an event called Game Slice in London, Ontario. Pretty much right now as I speak, so that's pretty exciting. We got this week in some art from Matt Kint for the new board. And I can't wait to show y'all. We're still just doing some minor tweaks and whatnot, but it's amazing. So I'm just so excited. So he's now progressing on to his other things. He just had a Kickstarter for Heck Treasury that just wrapped up. That did Bonzo Business, which is great for him and two of his colleagues that did a 110, 120, 130 page comic book treasury of stories from all of them. So that's exciting for him. And so now I think he has more time, now to go back and focus on mind management. So hopefully we'll see art pouring in and I'll start sharing that as soon as we can. That's it for this week. Thanks so much for joining me. My name's Jay. Take care.